Sandra Choi, welcome to Fashion Forensics.
Thank you very much for having me.
You have embodied the spirit of Jimmy Choo since 1991 when you first started learning design from the workshops. Then you went to Central St. Martin's. You dropped out of Central St. Martin's. And afterwards, you started working with your uncle, the Jimmy Choo, basically becoming a core part of the brand when it was first founded in 1996. You've then, since then, taken Jimmy Choo to global heights. You've become the shoemaker for one of the most incredible artists around the world. You've served as the creative director of the brand for almost 29 years now. And you've been the sole creative director for the brand since 2013. So I think it's only fitting to ask you, the first question is, how would you describe yourself?
Me? I love what I do still. And me, I would say I love fashion. I'm very practical. And I just love, I mean, if you talk about bits and bobs that I like jewelry, I like decorating, I like making things. I think making things is very me. In terms of style, it's quite simple, wearable, practical. That's me, but with jewelry.
Do you remember when you were a child or a teenager, the very first moment that your kind of visual identity started to take place? Was there something that you kind of look back and still remember?
So I grew up in Hong Kong. I was born here in UK. I grew up in Hong Kong from the age of 8 months to 13, 14. And being in Hong Kong as a child and a young person, I think you get influenced by a lot of the culture by what that means. It means there's a lot of influence from Japanese culture. There's lots of manga. There's lots of style changes. I used to love all the music videos that they make, and I think that gave me the grounding of dressing differently and really enjoying different hairstyle, different volumes in clothing, and that pop culture really kind of set the tone for me, I think.
Were you quite rebellious when you were a child or a teenager?
I'm sure that I got sent back from Hong Kong. I was living with my grandparents. To my parents is because I was getting a little bit out of hand. I mean, I used to shave off all my hair on the side and wear bright pink lipsticks. So at one point I was rebellious, but I was also looking for myself and trying to find the identity.
And what was it, the kind of first touch point that led you to finding that identity? Was there a different movement or kind of a musical or film reference that you always referred back to back then?
I think it's probably just fashion, magazines, music at the time. I mean, I'm talking about the mid-80s here. And whether it's Western influence in music, that kind of get translated into Chinese pop, Canton pop, because that's where Hong Kong was. Those things really excite me. And I also think that in terms of fashion, I remember looking into my aunt's cupboard and finding these 1970s big wedges of shoes. And I always wondered, how the hell are you going to walk in those? And what does this fashion will look and feel like? So it made me open up questions. And I think that may be my first encounter of shoes, but massive platforms.
I can only imagine when you saw them, they were so interesting just to
Yeah,
see, let alone
they're
experience
blocks.
walking in them. And when you kind of first started interacting with fashion as a teenager, did you always imagine going into the industry, or did you have something in mind? This something else, a different industry?
So because I came back when I was 13, 14, I cannot remember exactly when. But anyway, there's a magazine called Just a 17. And it's a teeny magazine, and they feature everything from TV to music to the way that you want to make things or get dressed. And they took articles, relationship problems for teens, also that. There was a picture in this magazine, and I saw it, and it was John Galliano's show from 1988. And all I saw was this outfit, deconstructed, double-breasted outfit, with buttons. And I questioned, how on earth was something like that being made? And I wanted to know who John Galliano was. And that was my first touch point on really loving fashion and really want to kind of like understand that who's wearing that and how do I make it?
I mean, it's quite interesting you mentioned because this takes me to the 5 images that you selected, which the very first one, which is in front of you, the very first image is the John Galliano 1988 runway look.
Uh-huh.
And you mentioned that his idea of style language and codes was so specific at the time and so groundbreaking. When you saw that and you started thinking, what were the steps that then you started taking to get into the fashion industry? What was the first step after that moment?
Well, I don't know how I got to understand. Maybe it was a fashion TV at the time. I think there was the clothes show that comes on a Sunday night, and it was the only TV fashion reporting from runway to how people get dressed, and that was on TV. And I think I heard his name, and then I wanted to do more research, and I think John Galliano's way of thinking and how he kind of break all the boundary really intrigued me. And I learned to know where he went to school, and that was in Saint Martin. And that was when, right, to know how to make that jacket, could deconstruct it, different, has personality, I need to get to this school. And that was what was in my mind.
That was the very first step that you kind of took. And it's very interesting you say that because it was actually a clothing piece that you were really inspired by. Did you want to first start making clothes and have runway collections, or was that kind of the gateway into applying for St. Martin's?
Probably. I mean, I just know that fashion was not far and I can make things because when I came back from Hong Kong, I couldn't speak English. So all you do is you spend hours trying to make things that you don't have. And I lived on the Isle of Wight, so there wasn't that much fashion on the island. So there was a lot of times that where I just make my own bag from a pair of jeans. So making things is already very much something that I would like to do. And for the clothing that I want to go to make is an identity and is something that maybe I can do. So I questioned it. I didn't think twice about going to fashion to do what,
Yeah,
but
it came
more going
very
into
organic
fashion.
to you
Yeah.
because it came from that idea, that your passion for craft,
Yes.
for making craft, for creating something of your own.
I used to have jeans that I had from Hong Kong and I used to decorate them with like paint. So for me, if you want something, you kind of start cutting and making, and maybe you get there.
And that's just kind of how you have to go for it.
Yes.
And I mean, you were kind of seeing a lot within your uncle, from your uncle Jimmy Choo, who you had access to, seeing how people create shoes and seeing all those factories and different workshops and how to hand create shoes. So, what can you tell me from the first moments where you kind of dived into the world of shoes and accessories? What do you remember from then?
So I left home at the age of 17, knowing that I want to go to St. Martin, so I have to get off the island. That's the only way. And my aunt is married to Jimmy. So I went to live with them. And, in my culture, when you go and live with family, you have to help out. And he had a workshop making made-to-order shoes for clients. And that was when the fashion world, the magazines and the stylists calling and wanting to borrow shoes for photo shoots. And there will be clients who come into the studio and ordering shoes. So all of that happened all in one place. The material was there, a few pieces of machineries were there. We had a few shoemakers who actually cut and construct and sew the shoes. So I picked up all the aspects of how shoes are made. And because making shoes is quite troublesome. It's not like you can get a sewing machine and go to a haberdashery shop and buy all the ingredients that you need.
It's not like you
to
can
make a dress.
recreate or recinch something. It has to be
Yes.
perfect.
It has to be perfect, but also 3D. So it's we have to be really resourceful because there's no shop that just sell you leather sole. There's no shop that will give you rolls and rolls of skins of leather. So resourceful is one of the things that we were very good with. There's no last. You want to change a different toe shape, you have to come up with a way of changing the toe shape. So that really opened the way that I think and I learn how to kind of move forward in creating designs.
And I mean, you were part of the creation of Jimmy Choo in 1996. You were like one of the first people, and you're still working and being the creative director. How was that decision for you to join the brand? Did it come in very organically, or how did you guys come to the decision to work together?
So at the time I was helping in the studio. Um, I gave up school and I thought to myself, I'm only like in my early 20s, 19, 20, and it's okay to give it up and see what happens. I can always go back to school. And at the time, I can see that there are clients who are interested in getting shoes made and they wanted shoes to match their gowns, going to events and so on. Celebrities were paying attention to the brand. And then at the same time, there was definitely interest from the fashion world. So I was busy. I was busy answering the phone. Harris wanted to supply the shoes. There was some kind of business happening. And that was the time when I met Tamar Mellon,
Hmm.
who was the accessory editor at Vogue. And I knew her because I was answering the phone trying to deal with, I worked in PR for Jimmy Choo at the
Yeah.
time. And she came and she wanted to invest in something different. And I didn't know that her family has money. And I just answered the phone call, got her to come to the workshop. We met and we got on. And then we just thought, right, that's what we're going to do. We're going to make some designs, go to Italy, find the factories, and make this brand available rather than being handmade in
Yeah.
the studio. And that was the really first step of how the Jimmy Choo brand came about in 1996.
Wow, and I mean, it's always we always talk about with many guests how the best things in your career always happen quite organically because you're not thinking 10, 15 years ahead.
Mm,
You're thinking about in that moment, I want to put something together and for it to come to life.
mm.
My vision from my eyes to come into onto life. What would you say was the main thing that time taught you? The time of trial and error and experimentation.
Um, I was already making things out of the cupboard. I mean, we used to have a cupboard that has all the leftover dress fabric. And this is the thing, shoes, you tend to think that it's out of leather and sway and that kind of material. But at that point, we were using print, we were using silk, we're using any fabric that you can think of. And that to me is like already being different. And it opens up how what you want to create and put it out there that is different to everyone else it became something very unique
Yeah.
and very dressed. And I guess that's the backbone of who we are and what we do. And for that business alone is I love the idea of opening a store. Maybe it's not one store, maybe it's 2, 3 stores. And then at the same time, the expansion of maybe it's not just a Jimmy Choo store, maybe it's an association with department stores. So I can see how we could make it happen with the partnership with Tamara, as well as the factories who are very supportive being in Italy. So we just kind of forge that organically and we learn on our job, basically.
Yeah, and you have to be very quick on your feet, quite literally, to
I love every moment of it. And I
yeah.
still do. So I guess that is in there.
I mean, you also talk about a golden age of fashion where experimentation and the fashion industry was booming and developing so quickly globally. And one of the influences that have also been one of the biggest influences in your life is what I'm going to go to the next image, which is the Helmut Newton image. Tell me a little bit about those influences.
So this image with Helmut Newton, Paris Night, is something that I just think is such good taste, and it sparked style, it sparked a moment, it sparked that how there's no gender there in a way for me. Um, I love someone called Tina Chow as a style icon, and Tina was a model in the 70s, and she's half Japanese and half German. And she was probably one of the first person who died of AIDS, actually. And her circle at the time was really interesting because she really invests in creative people. So Basquiat is her friend, Warhol, and all of them, they all kind of like blended in, and they all hang out, and to me they were the very first set of people who celebrate creativity and breaking down boundaries. And the fact that she was instrumental in supporting her friends, and I loved that. And
Yeah.
her style with short hair, kind of maybe have copied her, but she's definitely my style icon. And I just think that once you have taste and style, you can actually go on and keep on learning, but doing things differently.
Yeah, and I think, would you say she was kind of one of the first inspirations that you had in life, especially when you told me about the period with short hair and that kind of different side that you had to yourself?
Definitely. And then on the other hand, the photographer behind this is Helmut Newton. I mean, for me,
Iconic.
iconic, strong, celebrating women in a way that one might not think, but I
Yeah,
do think that he celebrates women, but making women strong and actually owning their own skin. And that to me is inspiring. And the imagery that he made was like, they were so refreshing and so bold and so iconic.
yeah,
And everything about it. I think that influence really kind of like instate in how I shape and do things in my design.
yeah.
And he loved all the women who wears shoes. When in his pictures, there are legs and shoes, and they're strong.
And I mean, that idea of portraying strength through fashion, I think that's one of the building blocks of Jimmy Choo as a consumer, as an editor, as somebody that I've had many touch points with it. What was it like to, when you first started the business and you were, you found those factories, it was 1996, and you started making shoes and as a brand. Do you remember something from the very first years? What were the challenges and how did you overcome those challenges?
To get shoes made in Italy, being an English person, a British person who don't speak Italian, could have been quite difficult, but
Yeah,
it was difficult. And at the time, I think the British shoe designer reputation wasn't so great in Italy. There were ideas, and but I guess it's because I know what to do when it comes to making shoes. So even though that there's no language between the exchange of the pattern cutter with myself in a factory, I showed them what to do. I showed them that, this is how you cut the pattern. This is what I want to
hmm,
push them to try to make. And I think those are very valuable to be able to show macho Italian men how to actually go about cutting the next shoe that I want them to make. And that to me is step number one, is knowing your product, knowing what you want to make and make it really good and really perfect. And I think because I had that training in the workshop by hand, seeing that if you don't have the last, you can always make the last out of car filler, which
yeah.
is a material that you repair cars with to make the shape of the last that you want, whatever toe shape it is, and adapt. And that to me is the fundamental of how I go about designing a collection, working on the finish of an idea that I had in my head, and building those things that really set a different within our collection.
I mean, I think you're hitting something very important for a lot of creatives, especially in this space, is that you need to know the process from start to finish, and you need to be able to almost, especially with something like making shoes that is so meticulous, you need to almost make it in your own hands
Mm,
in order to know, because that's when it becomes believable, and that's when the quality of your work starts to show it through, because you know what you're talking about, you know what you're doing.
mm.
And in those first years when it was a group of you building this brand, was there any moments where that spirit of collaboration really pushed you? Because Jimmy Choo grew really quickly as a brand in the 90s, and you had some iconic moments which we're going to get to as one of your next images. But getting the brand to really build its reputation, how was that experience for you?
um, I guess if you don't know something, there's no fear. And I
Very
think that's
true.
one of the quality that we had, because neither Tamara or myself had worked with any other big houses before. We just thought that we want to sell shoes. How do we make an appointment to see the buyers of Harvey Nichols or Harrods? And we did it. We just went cold calling and find the number, call them, and you'll be fine. We want to make shoes out of a factory that make all the other brand shoes like Gucci or Sergio Rossi at the time. And you don't know that too, but you do your research and you knock on the doors and hope that they will answer the call. So there's a lot of trial and error, and at that moment there's nothing to lose.
Yeah.
So, and even just doing, I remember the business at that time, it was built on a fax machine. It's not even computer
No
or email
email, no computer.
addresses. Yes, as long as the fax machine works, then you can communicate. And but that's the beauty of it. You get to want something, you do your work, you do your research, and you slowly just go for it. And there's that drive in us. So I always call it the entrepreneurial spirit in us, just because we want to succeed. So we try.
I mean, did you ever have a moment at the beginning there or in the first years where you had that, or have you ever had it, the moment where you're like, oh, I made it. I made what I wanted to do and I feel fulfilled? Or are you always striving to go for the next step and build more?
For sure, there's moments. I mean, I remember taking our first collection of designs. We met with some factories and they didn't deliver, and I only had sketches with me, and we had appointments in New York, and and the appointment's going to come. I showed them the actual sketches with no samples, and they still
Wow.
place an order. So that to me is like, wow, okay, it
What you
is
have is something
possible.
special.
It is possible. And I think there's already a little bit of like, because at that moment we made shoes for Princess Diana. So there's something there that people actually can resonate with you and maybe trust you. And maybe they believe that these girls will deliver the goods. So we forge our way forward. And I just remember, I've never been to New York before. And that was the very first time that I was in New York, standing outside Saks. It was quite bizarre, and the avenues were really big. I just remember, how could a very fancy department store that has also a hot dog stand right outside the door, and I couldn't quite comprehend that.
The two worlds merging.
Yes, yes. But that was my first moment feeling that we're gonna do this and we're gonna make this happen.
I mean, I can only imagine how powerful that was, alongside creating designs for somebody like Princess Diana, who was the style. People still reference her as a style icon.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that experience of getting the call and them saying, we would like you to make shoes.
But this was actually from the studio when British couture designer actually exists.
Yeah.
And there were a few of them, and because she's British royal, so she will engage with the British designers, and they were friends of ours, so they will make the dresses, they'll call us up to get the shoes made, and then at that moment they'll go to Anya Highmarsh and make the bag. So the whole collaboration situation really happened, and the fabric that the fabric cupboard that I talked about earlier, all the fabric from the dresses, I'll collect all the leftovers and put it in the cupboard. So those material is the matching shoes and bags that we
Wow.
were part of. And those relationships really kind of bloom, and because you made them one pair and they just want that ease of getting their shoes that they like to be made in other fabric. So the orders just kind of stacked up. And that was it. It was just something that we made really easy for her. And that relationship was forged.
I think it's also quite representative of the British spirit, how in British fashion, we have an idea of collaboration. We all kind of want to support each other and help each other. And you speaking upon a time which basically laid the building blocks for that, for London to become a hub of new design, innovation, young designers. You now work with and support a lot of London-based designers like Connor Ives, which you just had a collaboration with.
Yes.
How important is you now kind of paying back what you experienced into the fashion scene?
I always remember when I didn't really know the world of fashion. I knew nobody. I mean, I didn't even graduate from school. So school for me, like St. Martin, is where you make your connection. So
Yeah.
you could have your bunch of friends, and some of them would become photographers, and other would be editors and PR and so on. And you kind of like stick together and connect and move.
Through life.
Exactly. So you've already got that semi-company set up if you get on and you believe in the same thing. And that I kind of didn't have that because I was dropout. And I'd always say that, guys, stick at school because that is where your support system is going to come from. And I think it being in the UK, being in London, having that spirit, being just there to have fun as well as building and creating something is very unique. And I feel like there are that notion in fashion anyway. In New York or Paris, you've got different sets that are friends and you grew up together. And I think fashion is wonderful because of that, because it's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we spoke a lot about on this season about how fashion is a community that a lot of us misfits we find our balance, we find who we are through fashion, and we find how we can thrive. And especially nowadays in a world that is experiencing a lot of idea of removing community, this community is very important to nurture and to keep nurturing. And your work now with younger designers, what are the kind of things that they come to you when you work with young designers and collaborate with them? What are the things that you try to teach them?
The thing about Jimmy Choo is because we were self-made and we're British. So, I mean, you get a few British designers in London, but we are a brand that was built on this city with the same set of people. Okay, we get things made other places. But I think the thing that they like to know most is because of the power of the brand. How'd you do this and how'd you do that? And what was the beginning like? And don't forget, time's very different too. We built our business first and foremost out of a fax machine. The fax machine is long gone. So there are other ways of communication and making those business acumen. And I think that is what they want to know is how do you do that? Designing wise, there are curiosities on how do you make collection work, but
Yeah,
there's lesser of that. And for me, I believe in don't give your soul away. You always need to keep to your design ethos of who you really are. And then the rest will chunk in, I always say, because easy to sell things sometimes might not last forever. And you always have to have your design DNA of who you are to be there all the time. So don't lose, even though that, you may be risking I'm not going to get that order because my shoes or my design could be a bit complicated. But
yeah,
then you always have that balance because they want you because you stand for something. So let's
yeah,
not trade that off.
yeah. And don't
That would be
forget
my
about that.
advice. Yeah. It's easy to forget because you want to survive.
Yeah, and I think especially now with these times where because of social media, because of internet, because of globalization, everything moves at a rapid pace. Oftentimes we see people in the industry like kind of trying to shapeshift, and whilst for you and your work has it has transcended decades. It has transcended movements. It has transcended every kind of movement in fashion. And your styles from the 90s and 2000s are still very prevalent in popular culture. And I want to take you to one of those moments, which was the kind of intro of one of the most iconic shows that I grew up with. So many of the people who listen and watch us probably grew up with was Sex and the City, and Carrie Bradshaw as this kind of icon of fashion that people again still reference nowadays. And you were a part of that movement, and your designs were part of that movement. Tell me a little bit about this image and what it
Well,
represents.
I think when you mention Jimmy Choo, you remember the shoes. Which one do you remember? Most people goes, oh, Sex in the City. The
Yeah.
feather shoe, in fact, is right there, right in front of us.
Hmm.
Because she had a little bit of a fantasy Cinderella cut in the episode, and she screamed, "I lost my Choo," and that helped to cement the brand presence. And this is the power of media and pop culture. And literally millions of people watched it. We were available in America to begin with because America is such a powerhouse. We were selling massively in America. So most people think we're an American brand, but we're not. Um, it changed everything. It changed the kind of like this presence of Jimmy Choo. What is Jimmy Choo? Who is Jimmy Choo? And there's this curiosity of what we do, who we are, and the availability of the designs being sold in the stores over there as well as the department stores. Because I think America is the second store that we opened was in America. So we opened New York store first, followed by LA, and then followed by Vegas. And those were our 4 stores because London's already happened. So 4 stores in the world in the space of a very short time. And this was by 1999, we had those stores.
Wow. And do
And
you remember that moment when, you kind of this aired, premiered, there was so much feedback at the time. It became such a show that people really tuned into, and it became a cultural moment. What do you remember from that time when she said the iconic "I lost my Choo" and that line happened? What's kind of when it takes you back? What do you think?
to me, it's just the power of it because it's a TV show, not even a movie. Because
Yeah.
we were making shoes for movies already. I mean, we've done plenty of James Bond girls' shoes, and we've done at that point. I think we might have done Kate Winslet, Titanic, winning for her Oscar. And she wore Vivienne Westwood. So we had a little bit of engagement with the celebrity world, red carpet. But this was a phenomenon because this household, every single house and everybody who pay attention to that
Yeah.
TV series was a thing. But don't forget, that was girl power. 4 women living in New York, having the best time, leading with their own lives. That is a very powerful image. And Spice Girls was not far from there too. So it was just that time of everything was aligned.
Yeah.
And we happened to be there too. So, and it kind of led to the red carpet too. Because we opened the LA store, which was the tiniest jewel box in LA. And I remember it was quite busy because it's such a small store and everybody wanted shoes for Oscar, Academy. All the stylists were piling in and half the shop was empty because they borrowed and pulled everything from the store itself. And we also realized the power of that. And because our shop manager just called and go, "We can't really do any sales because the shop is empty." We knew very quickly the following year we need to be prepared. And we did. We literally went and designed a collection, and I just went, and these shoes were part of this. Design a collection where, because they never know what color they're going to wear, so we had shoes made specifically for red carpet in different sizes, and I'll be there trying to kind of dress and match all the different celebrities going to Oscars. And I think that become a pivotal point for Jimmy Choo to be in sync with dressing up being important and creating those really strong relationship with stylists. And I think today until now, it still is very much there.
I
And
mean,
that's
Jimmy Choo has become a brand synonymous with red carpets, with people's biggest moments where they receive accolades for such amazing work. You've worked with so many incredible performers. I also know that when a performer like Beyoncé comes to you and says, "I would like something that I can perform on, that's something that I can rely on," Jimmy Choo is the first brand that you think about. And how do you approach those creative partnerships where whether it's for performance or for red carpet? Has it changed throughout the years, or your ethos has stayed the same?
ethos-wise stays the same because I always imagined what would it be to be all the eyes in the world are on you. So when you stepped out onto the red carpet, you want to feel as though that the shoes has got you. You just want to forget about them.
You
You
want to
don't.
trust them,
Yes,
and
you
that's
can
it.
fuss over the dress. You can just be kind of like all flustered because cameras are on you and they're used to it, but still, it's their moment. They're not playing an acting moment. It's them. So
Yeah.
for me, it's that trust. Whether you are on stage or wearing a beautiful gown and the whole world's looking at you. And the way that I design is that sometimes you see them, they're very delicate. There's only 3 straps on the shoe, but is that fundamental of the building of that shoe that I might have learned in my years before, that really kind of like engineered the shoe. And then when it comes to stage, they need to look amazing and good and decorated because it's a different aesthetic, but at the same time, they need to be able to dance, move, jump around. They just want to be able to trust and move in the shoes. So as much as they're fancy, they work. They work on dancing. But and I can proudly say all my shoes you can dance in because I like to have a good dance.
Yeah, and again, we come back to the fact that you are your first customer is yourself. You know, you're thinking about how would I want to move in those shoes and how would I want to dance in them. And I mean, you've created so many iconic styles, which is quite interesting. And you so kindly provided a few of some of the most iconic styles that you did throughout the years. You've now worked on a collection, which is an archival collection, where you bring some of the most iconic styles of shoes that you worked on. Tell me a little bit about why you decided to bring all of these shoes from the 90s, 2000s back into the spotlight.
Well, Sex and the City has come back. It's
Yeah,
on air.
exactly.
New generation are watching it, and my children are actually also watching it. I just think that when something that is good, it should be celebrated again. And they seems right and they feel right. And you said it earlier when you were introducing me. I sound really old. I've done this for a long time, and there have been so many moments when I talk to my team and they turn around and said, "Oh, how about if we design it like this?" And I went, "I've done that already somewhere in here." So there's been a lot of conversation even with Connor. So when he comes over and we're talking about his new collections and he talked about all his muses that he wants to design for, there's this vibe that you felt, and so that some of the shoes that I did when in my 20s is going to work again. So
Yeah.
we've been spending a lot of time looking back in the collections from the late 90s and the early 2000s. And I do work with my designers, and they're the new generations, and we have conversations. And this is where we decided to look deeper into things that maybe some of them are very meaningful to me because I spent time building them and trying to figure out how to make things possible. But other times is the relevance of what other people think. So I asked Connor to come in and have a sneak in the cupboard and see what he sees, and I want to know what he saw. I had a conversation with Alex Fury because he is a friend of the brand and he's my go-to person. He's like a walking encyclopedia.
When we had him on, he said he has the Rayman vision of fashion. And Alex is also somebody who you can ask, you can zoom in a picture 400% and show one side of a dress or a shoe or a strap, and he will tell you exactly what it is from.
He's my walking encyclopedia of fashions. Through all the decades and the centuries. Anyway, I asked him what's the most famous shoe from Jimmy Choo, and I mean he loves fashion, but now he's getting better in shoes too. I have to say, he said "Sex in the City," and I said, "Is that it?" I really said, "Is that it?" And I said, "Come and have a look at all the things that I've spent time doing the last 20 odd years," and we did. So the three of us got together. I trusted them because one is from now, the 2020 something, and the other one is literally the most knowledgeable person on the planet on fashion. And then there's me who knows the collection inside out and why we did certain things, and perhaps it's like
it's also very personal to you.
Yeah,
you come from a personal point of view.
But at the same time, what I spent ages building might not be the most relevant in terms of design. So I'm so sensitive to that. I want someone else to tell me, someone that I valued and respect, to come and tell me what they are. So the three of us got together and we came up, and we spent hours talking. And it kind of revolved around the first 5 years. Everything happened from 96. So there's a shoe here from spring 97 all the way to 2001. So we just kind of like hover over the first 5 years and come up with 8 styles that are meaningful. And that opening line of the Sex in the City tutu is here.
Which is kind of incredible to think. And also it's interesting to see people from two different generations like Alex and Connor also always revert back to the same imagery that is stuck in their head. I think there's a lot to talk about how fashion's relationship with popular culture exploded in those exact years that you're talking about, late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
I also think it's partially with the explosion of communications. The world became more globalized. TV shows and films became more globalized. And, I also often think about my own mother who, grew up in Bulgaria, where until 2005, 2006, you kind of didn't have access to the kind of foreign, more kind of westernized media, and her first touch point with shoes was Jimmy Choo because of Sex and the City. So I think it's amazing how people can feel that they can be a part of that movement yet again in time.
But shoes is such a character setting piece of dressing tool. I mean, it's not clothing, but for me, you wear the shoes, you become that person that you want to be, and your choice of shoes kind of tell something about your mood, your day, and your personality.
Yeah.
Shoe can change. I mean, nowadays we all wear jeans and easy top, but if you change the shoes, it changes your attitude and change where you're going. So I think it helps to kind of set the tone.
Yeah, I've only always seen shoes as a very psychological thing because some people can conform to style codes of, like, as you said, jeans, t-shirts, something that's more general that we all kind of come back to. But shoes are very telling of who you are as a person. Shoes are, I think, the most the most psychological moment where you can see into somebody's soul as to who am I in the front of it. And I've always approached it that way.
I'm gonna look under the table and see what you're wearing.
But it is because I always think about like combat boots, and I love the kind of more darker influences of that. What are the shoes that you always reach to?
Boots.
Boots.
I mean, interestingly, you speak about combat. For me, that because I like to do things and go places, and I'm always on the move between 3 floors of the office. Boots is something that I can run in. I can trust it. It lifts me up when I put a little bit more heel on. It gives me the certain attitude, and I'm not swimming in it.
Yeah.
The boots get kind of like tied to my feet, so I just need to move. That's all I need to remember to do. So I trust a pair of boots a lot, and I wear boots day and night.
I mean, you've always talked about kind of having this rebellion side to you from the beginning. And the next image I wanted to talk to you about is that exact rebellion, kind of rebellious persona. Tell me a little bit about why you chose this image.
So this is Debbie Harry. I love it because I just think that she's sassy. There's something about her that she's beautiful, glamorous, but she has an edge. The way that she dressed, the way that she performed, there's something gritty, but sexy and beautiful and glamorous. I think that glamour suits what I love. I mean, I had 2 black and white pictures in front of me, and one is like a beautiful tuxedo in the Paris, like really kind of dressed up. The other one is messy hair, t-shirt, studded belt, and a pair of heels. I mean, what better than that? I just love that spirit of being a bit more playful. I like design that is contradict one another. So there's a sense of raw, but a sense of glamour all blend into one. So one of my best line is for myself is I love a raw diamond because I know the value of it, but you have to work hard to bring out the light. And I just think that because the ingredient is there, it's up to you how you shape and play with it. And so those are the things that really inspire me in terms of thinking about how I approach the balance of designing. So a shoe, a handbag, a pair of sunglasses, they just need to have this kind of finish, this sense of making you feel glamorous. And I just think that Debbie Harry is not the most obvious glamorous, but she embodies the fun kind of glamour. And she's amazing icon. And I love her fashion. And she's playful.
I mean, you also talked about womanhood, and these are all powerful women that you refer to in your work that have defined their own spot in fashion, and they haven't tried to conform to it. They've built their own point of view. How important is that in your work, and even now when you create collections, to really think about the woman who has a point of view? Who is the Jimmy Choo woman to you, and has that changed over the years?
I think she's still her own boss. she's the boss. I think she knows her mind. And I like an individual who knows their mind. I think that's the most important.
Yeah.
Just knowing what you want and go for it. Of course, along the way can be really noisy, but I think the innate quality for someone is not. But at the same time, I don't want to kind of convey that they are arrogant. It's not about being arrogant. It's about knowing what they want and what they want to kind of do for themselves and protect that. And I think that is probably the most important things in any person. And
Yeah.
it's hard because your friends will be doing something or someone else will be doing something else. And especially today, I find it confusing for people because lots of people follow. And then there's so much going on with like information that you can find and land on. And sometimes you kind of question whether
Yeah.
you should or shouldn't follow. And I just think that it's hard, but at the same time, you need to find yourself because once you find yourself, you can actually move. And that strength is part of a character and part of success.
I mean, I think it's very well put because nowadays when you're so bombarded with information, whether it's accurate or not, or there's so many style influences and trends come and go, I think what we've really noticed in the industry is the design language and the meaning of design that has stayed timeless. We speak about a collection that was created from 1997 to 2001, and 25 years later, it's still the armor of women and the armor of men and the armor of non-binary people that want to feel good, and it speaks to something. I think you
Feeling
have
good is glamour.
yeah. And it's you have a really tough job because you have to be an architect of design to trust and to build, but at the same time you have to think about design and be creative. Have you found the balance in your life between the serious parts of the job and the fun, easy parts of the job?
Which part is easy?
That answers
No, I'm
everything.
joking. Do you know what? It's I'm fortunate to be able to see the world. I mean, my job come with travel, and that's something that I love. I love meeting people. I love cultures. I love languages. I just love even different scenery and air and temperature. So I I absolutely adore the working hard, bringing the team to understand that, to make something beautiful, it lasts forever. And I often say to them, they need to have conviction and they need to be convinced of what they're trying to design and what ideas they have. And they're trying to kind of, in a way, sell it to me. Because sometimes I don't want them to just kind of like da 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 and this is it. Why? Why is this important? Why is this new and fresh and exciting? So when it's not obvious to me, I make them think harder and say to them, if you were to propose me something, make sure that you've got a case to go behind it. Because otherwise I might ask you different questions and how convinced are you? So those are the things that I'm trying to kind of instill in the team. And I think once you have that and you're convinced and you learn along the way and you are open-minded, you can keep building.
And you touched upon something that's really important, which is you have to be your own first believer in your idea, because if you don't believe in your idea, then nobody else is going to believe in your
But
idea.
that comes with experience
Yeah.
and time. So at this moment, you ask me whether I'm convinced. I am convinced with lots of decisions I make, but at the same time, I've got really good people around me, and I lean into them. I mean, I don't go clubbing anymore. I'm just joking. So there's the side of the job that is exciting because I want to listen to what they have to say, where they're going, what they're up to. And there's another side of the job that is really meaningful because we're making things that should last forever. And you can say that 1997 to 2001 is in front of us. Remake they may be, but they still are relevant. And I hope that the fashionistas and the new generation understand why these are the pieces that they might want to wear to get dressed in. So there's a fun part, there's a hard part, but I guess it's worthwhile when you love something that you do and you work with brilliant, clever bunch of people. That's inspiring. Even meeting people like you, that's inspiring, because I know lots of people who talk about fashion, but everybody has a different point of view.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. And speaking of inspiring people, your last image which you chose was somebody that has, transcended time in terms of being a fashion icon. It's Rihanna wearing one of your designs. And I wanted to ask you about that creative partnership with people like her who are so multifaceted, and
Mm.
how does it feel to work with some of the most incredible artists nowadays, current artists that are shaping fashion forward?
It's fun. I see that collaboration outside of the collection is an escapism, and it's a chance to actually exchange ideas but learn from the other half. There needs to be a synergy first, and this picture was chosen because those are the boots that I made with Virgil Abloh for Off-White, and that was a collection that we did. And interestingly, when Virgil and I got talking, because he actually, how did I meet him? He was DJing for us for one of our anniversary in New York, and I didn't know who Virgil was, but I got talking to the DJ, and understanding that he was beginning to actually shape how we have conversation at the time, beginning to shape. And I remember meeting him, and he spotted that I was wearing a t-shirt. It was just a Comme des Garçons t-shirt, and we were talking about jeans. And I was like, this guy knows the detail. He knows how things are made. And then we got even deeper. And to be honest with you, I had no idea what Off-White was at the time. But it flowed. Our conversation flowed, and because I think he was trained as an architect, and I am actually really good at designing product, not shoes, but product to begin with. When I was at fashion school, and I was doing my foundation course, and so there is a mutual respect on how things were made, and we got talking about making a collection together and doing it for his shows and so on. And then he was using Princess Diana as an inspiration. I was like, okay, this
I
is
know a thing or two about
yeah,
this.
this is clicking a little bit. And this is like in 2018. And I think the point about this picture is when you have two minds or two set of creatives, that's interesting. When you jam them together, you don't know which part you're going to bring from yourself and themselves, and then what you kind of make, and then it can become something that is much more phenomenal. And this was when I think Rihanna posted this picture herself, and I was thinking at the time, wow, this is nice. This is really great from, the Sarah Jessica Parker in in 2000 and 2018. We are also still dressing these phenomenal moments and still in the conversation of being valued and being valid. And I think that is what I want the future should be, is Karen having conversation, really kind of like bringing out all the good stuff that between creators and going forward and trying to kind of make creations make sense. Because I do think that unless it's worthwhile, it gets a bit pointless.
I think that's very, very well put. And this is also a testament to your creativity and your dedication to design and to being present in what's happening and creating things that have value. Speaking of the future, how do you see the future of Jimmy Choo from now?
Plenty of it. I can just go on and on and on. I think it's a very well-loved brand because whoever you speak to doesn't really know what they do and what they are. They know the brand first and foremost. They might not know the details of it. They know it's shoes, so we've definitely established ourselves firmly. I think Jimmy Choo can do a lot, but I like it to be done with respect, with the aura of glamour. I think I go on about this quite a bit just because I'm trying to find something to halo the brand. And I always think that it put you in the on a spotlight. You know, imagine that you're walking into a party, and because you feel so great and because you're wearing fabulous Jimmy Choo, you feel great and people kind of take one look at you, the party stopped. And that is the sense that I want to make Jimmy Choo to have, whether it's a squirt of perfume or a bag, is something that you kind of like associate the brand of having something positive, having a good time, wearing those high heel shoes that your mom wears, and that makes her feel good. That's enough. That feeling that you convey, that's enough. So I think Jimmy Choo can go a long way. We can do anything we want. It's just how do you shape it and carry it forward and being responsible.
Sandra Choi, thank you so much for being on Fashion Forensics.
Thank you for having me, Yanjo. It was lovely.